Okay, no more back.
I'm going to take it.
No, don't be sorry. Sorry.
What was it?
So turn it on and turn it off and turn it on.
Perfect.
Outside of that, that's outside of my level of expertise.
Yeah. Reboot.
Yeah. I learned that one.
Okay, we're live.
Yes.
All right, we had some technical difficulties there. I do apologize for making everyone wait. But just to update again, this is the Grant County Budget Advisory Board. And we'll just continue this meeting. We currently had a motion on the floor to approve the minutes from September 12th, 2025, seconded by Hackwell. And we were just calling for a vote. So I'll just go ahead and call for that vote again. All those voting in favor of approval, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Great, that vote passes unanimously. All right, jumping into presentations and discussion for today, I wanted to offer some updates regarding year-to-date sales and use tax revenues, as well as a bit of a status update in terms of how I'm seeing that the current 2026 budget is shaping up based on my own good faith estimates, as well as a short presentation based on a projection approach for 2026 that I wanted to run by this board, because sooner than later, we're in a few weeks here, we're going to start talking about what type of projection methodology we want to use for entering into this 2026 budget that we're working on. So I'm going to start with actually I'm going to go to the other screen. Did it close? Okay, we'll just use this one. I'm going to, let's see. It's pretty small, isn't it?
Budget projection.
Presentation mode, that works. Okay. So we're going to go into this screen here. This is sales and use tax collections for this year, relative to what's been budgeted. So the projections that we entered into the budget both at the beginning of this year and an adjustment to that projection by the amendment that occurred in July. So in the top part of this chart, we have the budgeted. So given what we projected to receive by the end of the year, and given the methodologies that were in place, this shows what we would have expected to receive in sales in each of these sales and use tax categories, for each month. And this shaded part on the top is the amended section. So that just shows that just demonstrates or reflects the updated projected amounts given that update that was made as part of that amendment. And which was a reduction based on the performance that had been happening up to that point in the year. And then this bottom part of the chart just shows the actual distribution collections by month for each sales and use tax category. And so I think the best summary to take away from here is that our current actual collections across these sales and use tax categories are this 10.15 million. And given our budgeted projection, which does incorporate the adjustment that we made for the last 5 months of the year, we would expect to receive 10.33 million for a variance of under 185,465. And so this line graph is pretty useful in demonstrating what we originally budgeted, which would be that golden line. And then, as you can see, it deviates here from the blue line because, as I said, our projections were reduced, and so those are the budget lines. And then there's this green line that shows actuals, and it's pretty across the board, or kind of been all over the place in terms of how we're performing relative to projections this year. In the sense that we've had 3 pretty soft weak months. We've had 3 pretty flat months, and we've actually had 2 pretty good months. And so it's hard to take away much from that when it's kind of dancing all around those budget lines. However, more recently, we have been performing really well, pretty well the last 2 months. As you can see, this green line in July outperformed what we originally had budgeted at the beginning of the year, and August came pretty close to that and definitely outperformed how we adjusted the budgeted projection. And as you can see, this variance, which is reflected in that 185, that just shows how we're performing relative to the budget. And as you can see, it's been in that 200 drop down, and it's been as much as, $300,000 to $400,000 below underperforming budget, but now we're up to 185 under. And hopefully that trend can continue. Any questions regarding this chart before I move on? Thank you all. I think next I want to go to, I'll go to this general fund status. So I want to be clear here. I put in parentheses CA estimate, clerk auditor estimate 91925, only because the numbers that I have displayed here are based on my own good faith assumptions and knowledge of the budget, and the best that I can do, and the assumptions that I feel like are reasonable to make in terms of projecting how, given the information I have, thinking about, what's a reasonable guess for what could happen as far as the rest of 2025 and also 2026, given the numbers. And but I will, I just want to acknowledge that there still is some missing information in terms of like what I actually know, or what still could happen in terms of impacts to the budget. Examples that I might have is like, I know that there's going to be some updated interest projections. I don't know how much different those are from what I have currently entered. I know that there's a question of health insurance and a cost associated with that in the benefit lines across the county. I'm not sure how that could adjust what's happening, but I would say I'm reasonably certain that we're within a plus or minus 5% type of range. That I feel pretty good about saying that. So I'll start with that. So basically what I'm wanting to display in here is the relationship between what we originally budget at the beginning of the year for 2025, what it appears that we will be spending by the end of this year, and I specify here operational expenses, in which what that means is salary and benefits and basically operations within departments, and it's adjusted to not include unexpected emergency types expense, sort of not emergency, but more one-time expenses that I don't think are necessarily, I personally think aren't necessarily appropriate for this analysis. Certainly one-time expenses do tend to come up. But I think if we're talking about, what it costs to run the county, I think this 20.5 million figure versus this 22.1 figure, which we originally budgeted, shows that we're underspending our original budget by my estimation by about $1.5 million. And we originally budgeted this year, in order to balance the budget, we budgeted to draw 1.1 million out of the fund balance in order to balance the budget. Now, of course, with the amount of unplanned expenses and transfers that are going to be entered into the budget this year, it does look like we will definitely need to draw from the fund balance at the end of year amendment to balance this budget. So this underspend isn't meant to reflect that we're going to be putting money in the bank at the end of the year. So moving forward, with the information that I have available and the current projections we have in place for sales and use taxes and for property taxes, revenue, I have revenue projected for 2026 at this snapshot in time at this 20.48 million figure. And expenses, with all of the information regarding department budgets that I have up to date, and some other reasonable assumptions I've made, we're looking at 21.21 million in expenses. So that sets us at 732,000 under budget. So this is the amount that we would have to sort of budget to take out of the fund balance in order to balance the budget if we were to move into 2026 with everything as I've projected or estimated it to be. And food for thought is through the years of 2019 and 2025, in compensation alone for salary and benefits of staff across the whole county. We have typically underspent by this 1.02 million amount as an average across all those years. And so, you know, there has been a valid argument based on actual data that budgeting in the red to a certain degree is a reasonable thing to do. And I guess my only other comments is that, you know, I've seen it a lot worse than this at this stage in time in terms of where we are at under. I think it is a good thing that we, you know, approach departments about a reduction in their department budgets. And, you know, it's my feeling that continuing a conservative approach in building this budget is appropriate. Any questions or comments?
I've got a couple. The underspend you show on line 3 of the 1.57,
Yeah,
does that take into account the money that we put into the budget in July? I mean, what that shows me is that we're spending under our budget, but I know that we put in what, 1.8 million to bring up the difference in July because we were coming up short, so I don't understand, I guess, how that number came about.
yeah.
That's one question I have.
Yeah, so it doesn't take into, so that 1.8 was related, you know, we saw that almost had a 1-to-1 relationship with unplanned expenses that had come up to that point in the year. And I have adjusted those unplanned expenses out of this analysis. And I recognize if that, you know, if there's disagreement in that, that perspective or that approach.
And then the second one, and I've got one more after that, the projections for 2026, there wasn't a way to put those into the charts so that we could see where your projection lines would be. I mean, I know that we've got what we had for 2025, but how do we get some kind of a projection for 2026? Or is that, I think you mentioned something in the future maybe, but
I'm going to bring up one other document that I have planned for this meeting to talk about projection methodology. I will say that, you know, what's built into this 2026 projection is pretty consistent with. Let's see. It's not a. It recognizes the soft economic situation that we're in. I didn't take the liberty of saying, oh, maybe we'll be 5% up or something like that. That's what I'll say right now. Does that make sense?
and then the last one I have is, do we have a line item anywhere in our budget where we attempt to underspend our projected revenues so that we can be putting money into capital? Because I know that we have some money in capital, but if we continue to utilize that as we have, how are we replenishing that bucket on a regular basis?
So your question is, do we
plan to put some money in the piggy bank basically to cover maintenance of?
definitely
everything?
not, you know, as I'm presenting here, you know, it's. The only way that would occur is if if this budget were to come to fruition or this budget were to be what we end up going into 2026 with, and we budget to pull 732 out, and then but what actually happens next year is we underspend by 1.5 million, and that would leave us with 800 to put in the bank. So it would be, you know, it would be total guesswork. It wouldn't be planning to do that. The only way to plan to do that would be to eliminate 732,000 from the budget, given these conditions.
Well, I don't know what the total is. Our capital budget has been hit this year, but maybe in our projections, we need to look at where that has gone on a 5-year average.
Okay.
Because if we're not planning for, basically, we're not planning for Sean to spend any money other than salary. I mean, we've got to have something to keep the maintenance in these buildings and everything that we have going on. We've got to be planning for that into the budget on a yearly basis. At least I feel we should be. I mean, it's like thinking we're not ever going to change the oil in any of the sheriff's vehicles or anybody in the county is right. We've got to have something put aside to deal with that.
Yeah, and so that's you know, that was obviously wasn't included in the assumptions that I've made in terms of estimated expenses for 2026. But you know, that's feedback that I would want to know in terms of entering into a tentative budget. If we want to enter into the budget an explicit, say, $500,000 or, you know, into the capital project fund as a transfer. And of course, that would be added on to whatever this estimated expenses would be. And that would create, you know, that would definitely create a more challenging budget situation.
Well, can maybe by the next meeting, we see some kind of projection, maybe not projections, but history, I guess, is what I'm more looking for.
Yep.
So that we have some idea what we need to at least be considering.
Yep.
Hey Gabe, and this is just my fuzzy memory. Didn't we always have a capital projects list that was kind of prioritized? And I guess I was talking to Jacques about this yesterday because of Angie's situation with the fire suppression system. Like, it felt like in the past we had that list and kind of like, we know these needs are coming. It was like, am I wrong on that?
Just like a master list.
Yeah,
I mean, other than like every budget year, there's kind of like a laundry list that is
Right.
sort of offered, largely led by maintenance, but with some other departments. But as far as like a master capital facilities plan.
yeah. Anyways, I feel like it's out there somewhere, and I think, Brian, that's why you've been asking those questions, like, do you foresee, right? So anyways, I think we should see if, I remember Mallory having a list, and I think it would be important because, you know, Angie, for example, has asked now for that. You know, I know she asked for it last year and we didn't give it to her, right? And so to me, it's like, well, if we know the X amount of things, we know they're coming, right? And to me, those should be prioritized beyond making kind of random purchases out of capital, I'll just say that, but we know things are coming, but I could have been wrong. Jacques says he remembers the same thing.
There wasn't.
Okay,
I don't know if it was like standard practice that we did that every year. I think there was a list that was developed
right,
for just like AC units and stuff
Yeah.
like that, like buildings that needed to be updated.
Yeah.
I think that was more
And I would-
Sean that kind of come up with
Yeah.
that.
and I don't know if this isn't lay on you, Gabe, I'm just saying whether it's Mark or Sean, that I do think it behooves us to have like our needs and the priority of those needs to the best of our ability. Like, I know, again, Angie's been asking for that for a while, and we knew it was coming. And now it's hitting the fan, but it was just a random thought.
Yeah.
Well, and what just hit the fan has nothing to do with the fire suppression system. It has to do with, it's never been made aware that we didn't have a backflow preventer on the current fire suppression system, which is a totally unrelated to her asking for an updated fire suppression system. It was something that was made aware of, and which resulted in the spend, I think yesterday, that we approved to rectify that situation.
Yeah, is to make sure that the glycol that's in that system doesn't backflow into the water system or into our, you know, storage.
So, yeah, so again, going back to this chart, I think like really what I think is important to communicate is that it's kind of a good case, bad case scenario where, you know, I think that it's a good thing that currently with our projected expenses as I currently I'm assuming them to be, and those revenues, this could be a lot worse, you know, we could be under 2 million and really sort of like looking at ourselves, what the heck are we gonna do here? But I would say that, you know, as Bill said, there could be budgeted expenses added to this, you know, regarding putting away for capital. For you know, the health insurance benefit, if that could be in line for an increase. I don't think that there's a lot of margin here. And I'll reiterate, I think continuing with the conservative approach moving forward is really the way to go here.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Maybe a clarification. So you're basically projecting 10% down next year than this year. Because when I look at 2025 original, I see 22 million. And then if I look at 2026 projected, that's 20 million. About 10% right there, right? 9%.
And it's, it's a little, like, it's a little hard because this 22 million here it accounts for the revenue that we budgeted in the form of the draw from the fund balance. If that makes sense. So this is closer to 21 million, actually. And then this doesn't include what we would otherwise include as a budgeted draw from the fund balance in the form of 732,000. So it's like, it's kind of hard to compare, apples to apples in that way for that reason. And yeah,
Yeah,
but it's important that you bring it up, or yeah.
No,
for
yeah,
understanding.
but I do see how you did the TRT projections there in that other document.
Mhm.
I think it would have been helpful if we had maybe just a little bit more methodology on to see that right there and how that and all puts together.
Understood. Okay, I'm just gonna open up this projection approach document, and touch on this real quick. So this is TRT distribution by month going back to 2021 here on this top, line graph. And then, what we have in the bottom chart is the total TRT distribution just from 23 and 24. A projected figure for the close of this year, and then going into 2026. I'm presenting right now this linear trend line approach to predicting 2026. And just to clarify here, how I'm picking a point here for 2025 is solely based on a year-over-year performance metric. It's not going back any further than that. So what has been collected from January to August this year versus what was collected from January to August last year. No, nothing more complicated than that. That's negative 7.7%. So I apply negative 7.7% to the total collections in 2024 to come up with 7.7 million. That's actually really consistent with what we currently have budgeted to and projected to be received at the end of this year. So it kind of lines up with what we already have in place, but it's based on actual data. And then, however, moving forward for projecting 2026, what I'm proposing is that we use this. We have now 3 years of solid data that are sort of the post-COVID boom. We have 23, 24, and now it's going to be 25. Where we have solid data to use to sort of to maybe get a sense for what the new normal is. And so I'm suggesting that we use that sample size of that 3 years of data and just draw a simple linear trend line and follow and pick that plot where that trend line falls at 2026, at the end of 2026, to sort of create an estimate of where we think we might be at the end of that year. I think it's a little bit more simple, straightforward, and easier to understand than what had been using the approaches that had been proposed previously for projections. I think that any member of the public could look at this approach and of course, and it does show that there's a softening here. It does look like, given this approach as it currently is, 2026 we would estimate it to be it would be relatively flat in comparison with this year. It's also important to note that this doesn't account for the 4.5% increase from 4.25% to 4.5% rate of TRT. And so ultimately, but I think, for the purposes of projections, we would have to just adjust what our ultimate projection would be based on the uniform rate. And so ultimately we would project here, but the actual budgeted amount would come up here to when it was adjusted for that increase in rate. Any questions or comments on that? Does this feel like a reasonable way to move forward with projections?
Just one comment would be, I don't know if we're taking into account the current slope with this, right? Like, I do think that it's a good idea to consider that longer average right there going back to 2023. But I also think that if you look at our 2024 to 2025 slope right there, unless we imagine something else, magically happening where that line is going to flatten out, I think that should be accounted for. So also counting in the more recent year right there. So maybe even taking your 2024, 2025 line, drawing that out, and then averaging that and your 3 year somewhere maybe in between. Because the way that we're looking at it right now, I think that we're looking at, we're saying that this trend is going to stop, right, like. That's what this says to me is next year is gonna be flat. Can't really tell if it's. If it's up or down on that. It looks like it's just about straight flat. With that line right there.
Roger that. So the next time we discuss forecasts, I'll be happy to include a methodology that factors in or perhaps averages our year over year performance with that 3-year average.
That'd be great. thanks.
Yes, no problem. Any other questions or comments? Thank you all. Okay, so we have the attorney here on the Zoom here, and we'll just go right into the department presentations. That's the next part. That's the next item in our agenda is looking at the presentation of the budget for the Grand County Attorney's Office. So I'll open this chart up. I do want to, before we dive in, I do want to note that I have to leave this meeting at 10 a.m. Finance Director Lindsay will take over from there and guiding these budget presentations. Thank you, Chantel.
Clerk Auditor,
so,
Clerk Auditor Wojtek.
yes.
I originally asked to go if I could go early, but to be honest, I am out of town, but my wife's off for a run, and so I've got an ample amount of time, and so I'd love to pass my time until after the two other agencies that my office supervises until after they present, if that would be possible.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks, Attorney Stocks. Because Andrea is the closest one sitting to me, we'll just go to the Children's Justice Center. Are there any objections from the board to move to do that?
No.
Thank you. All right, let's look at the Children's Justice Center budget. Yeah, Andrea, we have Andrea Noyes here, the director of this Children's Justice Center to present. Yeah, and if you just want to go over any major changes from 2025, adjustments that are made, and just any kind of other narrative or overview that you would like to offer.
Yeah, so just some major changes. You're all aware that we bought the house. This year, my budget came in a little bit under. Last year, I tried to cut my budget by 25%. And so skimming that even more proved challenging because we have $14,000 in that hasn't previously been accounted for to cover utilities at the new facility. But by doing that, I was able to budget in those new $14,000 in expenses and keep our budget still less than it was the previous year. So we've eaten up those costs in other areas. We're going to be taking a few less people to symposium this year. We also got additional funds from the state. I think by increase to 127,000 from the state this year because we're seeing more kiddos. So the overall ask or the total cost of Grand County is going to be 76,000 because the state reimbursement is 127,625 this year.
Can you say that one more time, the last numbers?
Yeah, so the state reimbursement is 127,625. And the total cost to Grand County is 76,914. So we had a reduction from last year's request while accounting for the rising cost of the new expenses.
And Andrea did a nice job of summarizing that in the narrative section at the bottom of this budget.
And that's on track with the 25% we reduced it from the year before.
So do we have time for questions?
Please.
Okay, so the first one, most of the budgets, as far as salaries, have been staying static. And I guess I would assume that's because we'll then talk about COLAs down the line. Is that correct-ish? I mean, most people, yes, think.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we did this process last year is that we presented all of the budgets without a COLA, and then I presented a COLA as well as any new position proposals and reclassifications, first to the BAB and then also to the commission, so that you could see what those differences would look like in the budget.
And so I just noticed that the salaries were up, and I don't know why, if you could answer that question.
why my salary's up
Mhm.
to account for the 3% increase already in there, in case that's where that looks like.
Oh, okay. Okay,
And we have both the COLA as well as, we have the pay for performance program, and so we have 3% milestone and exemplary increases
okay,
for employees, so you'll see that salary increase for any.
For that,
any tenured
okay.
employee that's been here. for longer
Okay.
than that.
so that's that, not the COLA, okay.
Correct.
thank you.
Yeah, that's the,
Okay, and then I noticed that the travel, you actually have it on 3 different line items.
yeah.
And then, so altogether it adds up to almost, it's $19,250. Which is a lot, just so you know. These two can attest this, I really pick on people's travel budgets, so I'm not sure, one, why you parsed it out. I think it would be better for the general public just to keep that as one line item, that's just my opinion. So people can kind of see it as one line item. And just to make a general comment, I do think in times where we're looking at a softening budget, I think people should look at reducing their travel budgets.
Mhm.
That's my opinion. I think that's a lot of money. And then the last thing is utilities. I'm not sure where you came up, because I thought about that. So are you talking about just power, gas, water, garbage?
Yeah, so I took those numbers as a projected from a single month that Chris sent over in bills, and I multiplied it by 12.
Right. For which facility?
For the new CJC, the
Okay.
project of the new center.
Wow, okay, those utilities. Okay, because I just like took my utilities and you know, because I have two little houses and doubled them, and I came up with like 6,600.
I took our actual numbers.
Okay,
And it does look like Attorney Stocks might want to make a comment here.
those are my only comments. That was, okay.
And then just noting for the board, and this is a unique part of the budget, a lot of the money in the travel is the symposium budget. Andrew, could you speak to what symposium is, and is that travel all just for you, and kind of go into that information?
Yeah, so a lot of our travel budget includes mandatory requirements for our entire MDT that we have to maintain to be accredited and to get state funding. So that includes taking the entire team to travel. It also includes our travel to DC and maintaining like professional licensing accreditation hours stuff.
And so breaking down.
So symposium covers our entire cost for everybody to travel there. It covers their stay. We budget, and the state does reimburse for a lot of that travel. So that's what the state accounts for as part of them paying us back the $127,000 for that.
And when you're saying everybody in the team, how many people are we talking about that we take for symposium, and what departments do they come from?
14, we end up taking them from the county attorney's office, from law enforcement, from mental health, from medical, advice or victims advocates to there. It also includes my personal travel to Washington, DC, which is mandated to go with the state as far as like advocating for legislation and meeting with representatives. And then it also includes like I sit on the advisory board for our Victim Services Committee. That includes that as well, which I have to travel to Salt Lake for, and our advisory board just for the CJC, which requires travel to Salt Lake as well.
Excellent.
And
Those were my only clarifications.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Andrea, if you had another thought.
And honestly, just to clarify, like those meetings happen at 9 a.m. And so rather than traveling the night before and spending money on hotel costs, I've actually been utilizing staying with family. So I'm not spending money, just trying to make those budgets happen.
And I'd like to comment too, I think that this position requires a lot of interaction with both the state and the federal, which in turn brings money back into this county. And I mean, think we're talking, what'd you say, $127,000 against a $12,000 travel budget. It's the same as commissioners that really are traveling and bringing money back into the county. I think there was a one-time 40 million for roads and an ongoing that came back you know, to the rural counties of Utah that I worked on, and that's justification and actually a responsibility to travel to bring those money back into our county. So I would be supportive of this because it is reducing the cost of this department to a pretty high amount in my mind.
Sounds like most of the true person. I do have a question, so. And it may be in a different, you guys don't look like you guys have a capital improvement. I'm just wondering with the new CJC house, I'm assuming there was some improvements or changes that had to be made. Was that already covered or we expect
Yeah.
budget for that?
No, so a couple things with that. The state, was gracious to give us 70,000 additional funds. In addition to the first time funds, we're using those monies to work on like the ADA bathroom and get everything to spec where it needs to be. Also, we've raised money in our nonprofit funds to supplement with those needs.
Yeah, I just didn't see anything up there, so I just assumed it was either going to be, or it was already covered, or it's somebody else. So,
And I'm curious about that too, you know, he brings up a good point, will the future capital needs of that building, is that something we're adding in? Sean goes from whatever number 10 buildings to now 11, I don't know.
Can I ask Gabe a quick question before he leaves?
Sure, Gabe.
Gabe, just super quick. I know this is budgeting, but the CJC's brought in a lot of money. I don't know if that ever connects to revenue when they come in, or how we track an individual department's ability and success of bringing in funds. And I don't know how that's tracked. I don't have that knowledge or that information of how those funds are tracked when they're brought in.
Track from a comparative standpoint, I mean, so for the Children's Justice Center in particular, they operate out of their own fund because all the funds that they receive are restricted for their use. And so that sort of analysis is, is just a matter of looking at, I believe it's Fund 46, or 40, what is it? 45, sorry. And so, does that help you? I guess.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think when we have departments that do bring in grants and funds, and be it, everything from travel, the trail ambassadors to CJC, to be able to track for the public and transparency, for them to say, hey, look, this department brought in X amount of money, because it doesn't show it on the budget, and I don't know if there's a perfect place to put it. We try to give them a shout out or a congratulations when they bring in those grants. But I don't know if there's a way to add that in, or if it would be appropriate to connect that to the particular budget fund.
do what I did. After revenue settled down, I just made my own revenue columns and put, this is how much I'm projected to bring in for grants, whatever it was from the state. So that way it's presented during this budget advisory.
Yeah, because I mean, over this course of this last year, that totals $607,000 that we brought into the Grand County.
And you're welcome to put it at the bottom.
Okay.
That a lot of different budgets have that on there.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to show it.
And I know it's a general comment that I've made, about departments such as the CJC or the Family Support Center. It's a situation where, like, if we can support a department such as these that, are so heavily supported by grant funds, it kind of translates to us getting more out of every taxpayer dollar that we're spending in a way. And so I'm generally always supportive of that kind of activity.
So do you just want me to put a note in the bottom of my?
So if you'll look at his budget, I mean, I'm sure you can, and I can share. You can sure he's okay,
I'll talk to you about it
Yeah.
after the meeting if you want. It's pretty easy.
or you can come up and I can help you.
But it's a good point. Thank you, Attorney.
Yes, thank you so much for addressing it. I just had that thought and wanted to catch you before you headed out. Thank you so much.
Questions for Andrea? Okay. All right, let's go to the next one.
And switch there.
Yes.
All right, so, as far as, any major changes with the operational and, expenses, they're basically the same. We received 2 grants. One coming from well, they're both from the state of Utah. One is in the amount of $123,000. And I noted that at the very top. And 75,000 of that goes towards salaries, which is reimbursed by this grant. The remainder of that would be county contribution. And then the benefits also, I have there 39,500 for benefits, as these are also reimbursed. That amount is also reimbursed by this grant. I have, again, most of these amounts are very similar to the previous years. I have moved a few things around, like just kind of going forward, knowing that CJC is going to be moving out of our building, so I've tried to account for the extra, because right now, power, we pay 60% and CJC pays 40%, so I've tried to adjust for that. And then in each of these line items, I've listed things that we use the grant funds to reimburse for, and that is includes maintenance and repairs. We did receive in our second grant from the state an additional amount of funds. Previously it was 108,000, and this year it's 119,135. And with that, I tried to put that amount towards salaries and benefits, because I do know that that is the portion that the Family Support Center relies on the county to supplement. Other than that, our operational costs and programming is all reimbursed by those 2 grants that we received.
Does anyone have any questions?
Just real quick, so the 2024 county contribution was 151,000, and then 2025 contribution was 192,000. And then 2026 is 278,000. So.
Yeah, and we do have 3 full-time positions that received this year exemplary and milestone increases.
Okay.
And that is also.
Is that the large contributor to that right there?
Yeah.
Okay, and then
That was my question.
the second is are there, like I said, I've asked this, are there any planned deferred maintenance that you guys have coming up, especially with the CJC leaving?
No, well, so
Capital improvements or things like that that aren't accounted for in here?
all of those repairs, maintenance, we as the Family Support Center do have in the past just taken care of, like air conditioning, heating, plumbing for the whole building. So those costs have already been considered in this budget. We did just have our office, our building is maintained and overseen by the state of Utah. It's owned by the state of Utah, and they came in this past year and made an assessment. And we had quite a few upgrades with our building through a legislative grant that they proposed. And so we are really good to go for a little bit, I would hope. But as far as the regular plumbing and heating and things like that.
I think my big question was, is there gonna be a big remodel? Right, that's gonna happen.
No, I don't. No, we will be able to use that space as is.
Okay,
Yes.
that's how, thanks.
Trish, did you
No,
know
that was the question that Brian asked, the question I was gonna ask.
All right, thank you. Stephen, are you ready? to do
Yes.
the County attorney
Yes.
budget?
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank both Andrea and Julie. They do an excellent job every year at presenting their budgets and getting everything put together. So thank you. Thank you to both of them. Can you guys see my budget?
Pick your budget up.
Thanks, ladies.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, and I'll follow along as you
Yeah.
go through each item.
Okay, so we have pretty much year over year remained roughly the same. A couple of years ago when I came into the office, we originally had 2 full-time attorneys. We've shifted away from that and gone to contract attorneys. Just for the commission's reminder, my office is usually between $100,000 to $180,000 under budget. We've done that for the last 2 years. We've made adjustments in some of the salaries. Everybody in my office that has gone through the process for either an exemplary review or a milestone, there will be increases on the salaries throughout. We've got training that is listed out. We've tried to highlight training for the office. We want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to go attend trainings. That includes the UAC, the UPC represents Utah Prosecution Council. The BCI is the Bureau of Criminal Investigation. We send Terry and often either Emily or Jessica in my office. UPC, Terry and I will be attending that. UPAA, Chris Hakushi and I will be attending that. I attend UAC, the UAC Civil Government Conference. Chrissy Hoffline and I usually attend that. And then CARPEL, which is our operating service. Usually we have sent, in the past we've sent Chris Hakushi, and this year we're planning to send Terry. Because of the unique nature of the attorney's office, we have a lot of trainings throughout the year. We have a lot of updates and a lot of requirements that flow through that. One additional note on the salary, we're going to ask to take the salary amount from the chief. We originally had 3 attorney lines. We're going to take and eliminate 1. That was to help offset the transition of Emily Butterfield back to the county attorney's office after her departure. A few years ago, she went to the justice court, and now she's returned to the county attorney's office. And additionally, we're using the chief deputy salary to be put in hourly conflicts. Those hourly conflict attorneys, normally we've utilized Bart Coons, John Sturmer, and mainly for our criminal prosecution, we've used a gentleman named Aaron Lancaster. He covers the district court, and then he and I share the balance of justice court as well. So that is one change. All of our other expenses, our office supplies have stayed pretty much standard. Equipment, we need to purchase a new Mac computer for Chrissy Hoffline. Her computer's been identified as being pretty old. I think it's a 2014 or 2012. And that's on the second to last item on the first page. I'm just tracking along with that. Next.
What's about
Yes.
salaries, Stephen, before you leave that portion?
Yes.
We've had discussions about, and I think it was considered a part-time position of victims advocate falling under your budget. Have you accounted for that anywhere in here?
When we raised it to Gabe indicated that because of this year being a lean year, that all of those requests for additional positions will be done through a separate process.
Okay.
But just to, while we're on that topic, we're looking at seeking a part-time victim coordinator or victim advocate. The goal would be for somebody to be working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Court days for bail hearings are on Mondays that we don't have a law in motion calendar on. That's a fancy way of saying the standard day we do district court. That's normally on the 1st and 3rd Tuesdays. And that's the main day for district court, and then Wednesdays, every Wednesday except for the first Wednesday of the month, is justice court. So if we had somebody that was part-time as a victim coordinator for the first 3 days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we should be able to cover their facilitation of victims coming to court, being informed of court, and we would share that individual, of course, with the sheriff's office to provide services for victims. I can go into more detail, but I'm going to bring that up as a separate item. That's something that the sheriff and I have talked about to better assist and address the needs of the county for victim services.
That satisfies my questions. Thank you.
Of course. Next, we have registration for UAC. That's an annual registration. And then the 2 additional memberships / training, civil training for Chrissy and I to attend that training. Going down to the next, we have more training and costs. The spring conference, UPAA, Bureau of Criminal Investigation, Utah Prosecution Conference. Those are the fees to attend those trainings. Code books, we've reduced that. Major crimes, this is kind of a funky line. We almost major crimes, they're just additional costs. I think the last time that our office utilized that was for, well, it's been some time, but anyhow, that amount of money normally stays there. If the budget advisory board is wanting to eliminate that, you definitely could. We would just come back and request those funds. But normally what happens is we earmark it, and then when we don't use it, it comes back to you folks. Carpel, this is a pretty expensive product that we utilize for case management. This was purchased the year before I came into office. It shifted prosecution away from the state-funded e-prosecutor service at a substantial cost. They've got some unique and neat features. We're going to work and utilize those further, but they do have a high annual cost. The county is, kind of bought into it at this point. We had a substantial upfront cost. We're trying to utilize it as best we can, but it is an expense, and we don't really have a substantial amount of control over it because we have all our data and information put into the Carpel system, and when we want to transfer away, it would be a substantial cost to the county. So that is a high amount. Next, cell phone allowance jumped up quite a bit because we really haven't been tracking it in the way that we should. For whatever reason, our phone lines at the county attorney's office is exceptionally expensive. And then additionally, we've provided a credit to staff. The reason why we provide the credit to staff is because at times we've had to have staff text message witnesses, and they utilize their phones. I have my own, additional cell phone, and so does. We have had another phone in the past for a different attorney when the need arises. Gas, standard amount to go to trainings. Special department supplies. Generally, we're using those for transcript services. If we have to pull transcripts and prep for a suppression motion based on testimony that occurred in court, it's a chunk of money that we need to pay out. Witness expenses, if we request that somebody come to court out of state, we have to, at a minimum, you get $18.50 to come testify. If you have additional days, then you can get additional payment, but those are the costs for that. And then down below, we've zeroed out inventory for the goods and materials. And then lastly, we host trainings during the year. Normally that's to buy donuts or different pastries and such, soda to provide for them while we do trainings. And then I put additional information down below. We have reduced. I would, gently, I would say that there's going to be an additional increase in expenses in the deputy legal services line. That's again the attorneys that we pay hourly. The reason why that's a better model than what we've had in the past is because we go out and we hire experts in the field. One additional amount of money that's included in that deputy legal services is the Utah Association of Counties, UAC, They have an individual that has retired, or not retired, that has moved on from the Washington County Attorney's Office. His name is Eric Clark. He's working for UAC. UAC is going to provide a service to the counties, and I believe the commissioners were informed of this as well. For $10,000, there's an ability to have a conflict attorney like we utilize John Sturmer and Bart Coons for at a flat fee amount of $10,000 per year. That's something that we're looking at that might be a cost savings as well to the county instead of paying hourly for the other attorneys. He brings a wealth of information and knowledge, and he was a previous county attorney. And small world element, his aunt is Julie that just presented. So small town connection to Moab. So anyways, that's generally the office walkthrough. Happy to talk about any particular line item. Or any questions that anybody has.
Thank you, Stephen. Are there any?
I have one, and it's not really directed at Stephen, but I believe last year it was brought up, and I don't know where we are with Verizon, but with the vast amount of phone plans the county has, it would seem that we would be able to leverage some of these costs on cell phones. I know construction companies do it, everybody. When you get over a certain number, why they start giving you all kinds of benefits and reductions, and I don't know if we have one person looking at every cell phone plan.
I refer to Jenny Beth on this. She would know more on this.
It'd be the business side of Verizon is who I use, but there's gotta be a way to.
I mean, I see the bill, but it's.
Yeah.
Matt,
I was gonna say, it'd be more than that conversation.
Matt,
I think we can bring it up during his budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question on that, though, isn't there a program through UAC as well?
They haven't gone to Verizon yet.
So it's just,
It's two other phone companies. I don't remember, one's an oddball and one, but not, Verizon hasn't been willing to join yet.
I would imagine for the 90% of the county phones, though, most people are connected to the Wi-Fi with their phones. I don't know if we need to have, great cellular coverage out in the backcountry for all of our county phones.
Yeah.
I would say we
Visible
would-
by
or
Verizon.
sheriff's
and it's-
office.
Sheriffs would be
Yes,
different,
The
yeah.
sheriff's office
That would
has a huge portion of the number of phones, and I would say they do need incredible coverage.
No, I would agree with
And
that.
then it used to be, because a lot of the county doesn't get work cell phones, they just get that monthly stipend,
Yeah.
45 or the 90. We used to be on that,
Mhm.
but it was cheaper to go to the cell phone plan and just get the cell phones. Everybody works cell phones, so that's why we did it, but I don't know what plans Matt has looked at, the cost savings in regards to that, so.
That's the only point. I didn't have any problem anywhere else or any questions anywhere else.
Does anybody have any other questions for Stephen?
That was good, Stephen. You covered everything.
Thank you,
So,
Stephen.
Thank you all. Hopefully you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You as well. Okay, we'll move on to personnel services next, and Tess.
All right,
Take the floor.
thank you. Thanks very much. So I'll go ahead and, as everybody else has, I'll just go line by line. So I actually prepared 3 different versions of our budget. And in this version, what you'll see is if we were to reduce both mine and Laura Allred, the assistant director's salaries, under the assumption that we would work an average of 36 hours weekly as opposed to our current 40. This was something that I talked about in the last budget advisory board meeting, where as we're, putting this expectation on departments to decrease their budgets by 5%. In many departments, mine included, last year, my budget had 92.5% of it just attributed to salary and benefits. The small department, we don't have a lot of operational expenses, and so for me to get that 5% reduction, unless I totally cut my operating budget, which would render us not very useful, to be able to meet that 5%, I would need to reduce budgets. That being said, we wouldn't in actuality be able to move forward with this unless there was a revision to our policies and our employee handbook. And so this is again, just essentially, and in a sense, I'm using myself as a guinea pig to demonstrate what this would look like if we would allow departments to reduce some of their staff hours so that they can reduce the overall cost of their budget. So by reducing mine and Laura's hours, we would be saving, quote unquote, saving, reducing our salary and benefits by about $23,000 annually. That is also even with those 3% pay for performance increases to our base wages. We don't have any overtime, which is great. We just essentially shift holidays and things like that if say we have to work on a Monday for payroll. For subscriptions and memberships, I went ahead, or excuse me, let me pause there. Does anybody have any questions about how I got those salary and benefit projections?
I just would again ask, since last time you brought it up, how does this affect your retirement with URS?
Yep, great question. So were myself and Laura to opt into this, then our retirement contributions would reduce, and that's why that benefits reduction in part is there. And then service time would be added to however long.
Longer.
I would have to work longer to get my full retirement. Yes, that's correct. And again, at least from where we sit, we would prefer to do that than to have to lay off a position in our department or see another position within the county laid off. You know, it's a compromise that we're very, very happy to make for those purposes. Great question. Do we have any other questions on that before we move forward? Okay, great. Let's see, for subscriptions and memberships, I went ahead and listed out currently what our subscriptions and memberships look like for TechNet surveys. That is a survey platform that many counties and cities contribute to. It is how we do our compensation analysis surveys. So other public sector organizations put in their salary ranges as well as what their current, what the current employee inhabiting a specific position makes. And then that allows other cities and counties to compare what their wages are. So a lot of the time when we're trying to determine what should this new position be making, we start looking at those ranges and do those comparisons. It has data for Utah, a lot of good data for Utah, but it also covers outside of Utah as well. And then we have a number of different subscriptions that are specific to the HR field, so SHRM and POSHRA. And then our Canva subscription is what we use to create all of our digital marketing materials. So all the posts that you see on our website, et cetera, are generated through Canva. Do you have any questions about subscriptions and memberships?
No, just. So when, your original budget was 800 and then you've overspent this year by the 17, and is that Canva? Is that the difference right there?
Great question. So Canva, and then my understanding is that my predecessor was actually, I believe, either involved on the board of TechNet or something to that extent where I believe we were getting a free membership, and that changed this going into 25. And so that is what that additional cost was that wasn't anticipated. Great questions. All right, so for travel, we kept that budget the same. We didn't end up traveling this year in part just because of the extenuating circumstances, and then also to save on our budget for this year. But I did put that 1,000 in for next year for us to be able to go to the UAC at least one UAC conference for legislative updates, networking purposes, et cetera. Do we have any questions on that? Great. Basic office supplies. We haven't spent a whole lot this year, but even since these numbers were handed over to us, we had to, make a big ink purchase, et cetera. So although we've been very, very conservative, there are some things that we're going to be needing to re-up before next year. We did a pretty good restock towards the end of last year, so we're kind of coming to the end of that restock. Do we have any questions on office supplies? Okay, great. So these next two line items, professional services and recruitment, would like to focus a little bit on this. So previously we've had $10,000 in professional services, and we've overspent that pretty consecutively the last few years, or pretty regularly the last few years. So that our professional services previously covered background, criminal and motor vehicle background checks, pre-employment drug screenings, and then our Express Evaluations platform, which is the digital platform that we use for our employee evaluations. It's the system that we distribute them through, track them through. It also has some really great tools such as supervisor employee check-in tools, et cetera. So you know, it's got some quirks that we're still working out certainly, but overall it is a much better system than the pen to paper that we had before, in my opinion. So previously we've had that in professional services. As we were talking with Gabe and Chantel, we were questioning, should some of that be moved over to more of recruitment? Because some of those are onboarding expenses, specifically, again, those pre-employment screenings as well as criminal background checks. So we moved it all over to recruitment, but again, with express evaluations being about half of that. And we did overspend what we had previously on background checks and pre-employment screenings. We've been bulking up our background checks, and then we also had more hires this year. So with all that being said, we could say split and put, you know, 5,500 in professional services and 5,000 in recruitment. We're going to be I'm projecting we're going to be spending right about $5,000 on screenings and background checks this year. Previously, and including this year also in professional services, any legal fees, search firm fees, that was definitely a really big one. That wasn't planned going into 25, but that was coded to this line item. So those are again, some things that, you know, whether we have some of those items budgeted for elsewhere in a non-department line item, or again, if they continue to live in HR, either deciding, do we want to just keep the overall pot of money, $10,000, knowing that it's, you know, could be likely that, you know, we continue to go over, or do we want to just say, we know that we're going to be spending about $10,000 because we know roughly how much we spent on background checks and pre-employment drug screens. We know exactly how much we spent on express evaluations. And all the others we don't have many good predictors on that. Do we have any questions on that? I know I essentially just threw out questions as opposed to having those solutions, but I knew that was a good thing for us to get to talk about. Okay, great. I'll continue forward. So cell phone allowance did go up. And so for that, with the 2025 budget, that number should have been higher in the first place. But similar to county attorney's office, in my office over time, cell phones have become a lot more utilized. We have people texting us, calling us, et cetera, as opposed to reaching us on our office lines. We're moving around a lot. Additionally, something that myself and the assistant director, Laura, are very passionate about is working out a more formalized system of having one of us on call on weekends so that if there is some type of accident or incident, people know that they are going to be able to reach us, which of course would mean that we are going to be using our cell phones as much as we do already, but again, formalizing that more. People already are really great about notifying us when incidents happen outside of normal work hours. Do we have any questions on that?
That's 3 phones.
It's 3 phones. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Or is that just?
It's a stipend. Yep, exactly. It's a stipend. But as a caveat, I would certainly be very supportive of and excited about us potentially moving towards having work phones, especially if there's savings. My eye kind of twitches at how much we spend on cell phone stipends. So I would be very, very excited for us to go away from that. I know also for work-life balances purposes, I've had a few directors indicate that they would be very happy to not have to use their personal cell phone anymore. Great. In terms of inventory, I gotta tell y'all, I have no idea what this is an institutional knowledge gap. We haven't spent anything on inventory this year.
You don't have any computers that you have to update?
No, not this upcoming year, no. We did skip an update on a desktop in 25 because it was working just fine. And again, we were trying to cut costs. Everything's working and running perfectly well, and none of us are slated to have any updates this year with any of our tech or laptops or desktops. So we're just gonna keep our fingers crossed that they're running throughout 2026 as well. And then schooling expense. Definitely we're very, very passionate about wanting to continue our education in our department. So I did keep that line item at 5,000 again. And also outlined some items that we will hopefully be, doing training on. So this is a little bit outdated, this SHRM CP, et cetera. So in talking with my department, we came up with some ongoing education goals. So as of right now, what we are hoping to do is 2 of us go to OSHA 30 training for the risk management aspects that lie within our department. There's a Utah dispute resolution mediation training that I've had my eye on for a number of years and would really like to attend. And then there are some additional certifications that come with learning and development, you know, HR dashboards and metrics, et cetera, through a system called the Association to Innovate HR. So I'd like us to have a membership to that so that we can have access to those certifications.
So my only question is, so this number is if you reduce your hours.
If you reduce our
Yeah,
hours.
okay. So what if you don't have that number?
Yep, so if we don't reduce our hours,
Or just the percent, maybe just that?
Yep. if we didn't reduce our hours, then we would be at 101.15% of our 2025 budget.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
even if I cut, you know,
Yeah.
I've played around with the numbers a lot, even if I cut all of our travel, all of our schooling, et cetera, I only get us down to about 99%.
no,
We
that's
just,
good. Yeah.
our operating expenses are so little that again, it's really if we're not adjusting that salary and benefits,
And that's
it's
36 hours.
36 hours for each of us.
They're classified as full-time.
Yes, okay, yep, and we've checked with Utah Retirement Systems.
Okay, good.
It's, we're, as long as our organization allows it, they allow it. Per ACA, Affordable Care Act, you only need to work an average of 30 hours or more to be considered full-time, so.
So your vision is we just push it out. I mean, I'm just kind of pie in the sky. We push it out to all of the employees and say, is anybody interested? Is your thought?
Mhm.
And outline all those little nuances. Okay.
Yeah, correct. And then see, and you know, I've had a lot of informed conversations. Some folks are not interested in it. Understandably, they either
Absolutely.
can't afford it or again, they're like, no, I'm retiring and getting out of here as soon as I can. And then others are saying, you know, if it helps make my budget work, if it means I can keep more staff, if it means that I can have a little bit more of that work-life balance, I'm happy to take you know, those compromises. Okay.
And I think you'd be, I mean, based off of the 25-year retirement, I don't know where you guys are sitting, I mean, you guys would increase your retirement by.
Yeah, that might be, that's a great statistic.
Mhm.
I'm working on that. What are you talking about?
I think a lot of us feel that way. That's why we're like, it's so, you know, it's arbitrary.
I've
Whatever.
already-
It's
I've
gonna work
already got
forever.
my
Who knows?
clock.
I know,
Are we
you got
gonna
your
have
clock.
retirement? We don't know.
Tess, do you
So-
want to explain your other 2 options? Or
Certainly.
I don't have access to those, so if you just want to explain what the one line item that's gonna change, I can pull just up that line item.
And by the one line item that's gonna change, you're referring to the salary and benefits or increased professional services that
Yes.
was recommended?
Yes.
Okay, great. So when I was reviewing, what I was gonna be presenting, with Quinn Hall, he indicated that it may be in good interest for us to increase the professional services line item that again, previously we've had it at 10,000. He had indicated that potentially even increasing it up to 100,000 may, you know, be in best interest or interest to us, just based on historical data of the last several years. I know that Gabe had very different thoughts about that, and I'm frankly I'm torn, right? It's very difficult to again budget when it's just a moving number, right? But that was a suggestion that was brought up and one that in one of my scenarios that I drafted up, I did have that increased professional.
And I would say
services
that,
line item.
and unfortunately, it just falls into that line item
Mhm.
in that budget. So if it was 20,000, 50,000, or 100,000, whatever was decided, that really took her percentage really
Yeah,
high,
of course.
which didn't make much sense
Yeah.
that it would have to affect
Right,
their salaries or
Yeah.
however they were gonna
sure.
do that. So I do want to
Yeah.
note that.
Yeah, understood. I guess, that never causes me a lot of angst.
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess it'd be, to me, I think I'd like to see how Slavin, what they produce, and I know that there's all these kind of, whatever you call it, insurances that they give us. Like, I'd really like to see how it works out for us before we start committing a line. I understand, it might not just be just the
That's-
Slavin, but
Yeah, great consideration.
yeah, like, I'd like to just see how it works out for you, even through 25, right? And I understand we're budgeting right now, but, that number causes me angst.
What's your vision? What do you see in the future? Is this the way that things are moving into this? I mean, is this something that we should just, maybe it's not this year that we're planning on it, but next
Right.
year we're definitely like, no, this is the way
This-
that,
Right.
I mean, because I can tell you
Yeah.
5 years ago, I didn't use any type of recruitment
Yeah.
for guides, and right now it's like, if you're not
Yeah.
on hiring guides that way, you're not reaching out to enough
That's,
people.
that's
And so like,
exactly what I'm
that's
thinking.
definitely has changed for me, at least as a business.
Yeah,
I'm sure that it's, I just want to know what your
yeah.
thoughts are on it.
Great, excellent question. And what I'll say is I'm trying to keep essentially a finger on the pulse of what other larger employers are doing in Moab generally. So I've just talked with the city. They've used recruitment firms in the past, have stopped for now because they had some mixed, kind of felt like they had mixed outcomes. The hospital has kind of had some ebbs and flows, but now they're really trying to hit using some recruitment firms and some other just ways of bringing in employees, because of their struggle staffing, and they of course have very specialized positions that they're staffing. And so I'm trying to just keep in touch with others and say, what is your experience? Good, bad,
Yeah.
neutral, right?
Yeah.
And so with that, what I will say is we have not used recruitment firms previously in Grant County, and we are actively, essentially conducting our own experiment on what is the effectiveness in this, and we may not know
Right.
for a year or two, right?
Exactly.
Once we do have a recruitment, a recruited employee placed, again, we don't have all of the data yet,
I know.
And my experience though with it has been the length of employment has extended
Has it?
with it,
That's
right?
cool.
And because I will have a bigger pool, right?
Yeah.
So, when you have that bigger pool, you're definitely getting a length of stay. And just for me, and I don't know, the one big consideration I always take in is what is the cost of the training? Right?
Yes.
Is the cost of the training of bringing in somebody 2 or 3 times a year versus the
Yeah.
cost of the recruitment? Where does that's
Yeah.
my balance right there.
Good point.
Yep, no, I agree. Retention is always
Yep.
Financially more responsible.
Yeah.
Responsible decision. So I fully agree. So with that being said, I can't speak to, how do I say? I don't feel confident saying one way or another for 2026. I think we're going to need to collect more of our own data before we can make a determination on that.
I would say that, the trend definitely across the country is going to using hiring firms more and more, and the fact that we've had the need to do so recently really shouldn't be reflected, and I appreciate the first one, even though this money needs to be put in there, I don't think that should be held against somebody trying to reduce their hours because we've decided to use a little bit different hiring method. The issue is the last 4 or 5 years, the hiring that we've traditionally been doing hasn't worked. It's very clear that the turnover has been astronomical in some of these departments in the last 4 or 5 years. So going after a more professional approach, I would think makes sense. And I don't think because the commission or the administrator or the collective of the county is choosing to go that route should be reflected against what our budget numbers look like. So
I agree.
not every budget is gonna be able to reduce every single line. There's
Right.
just some things that we can't with the situation we're in.
Did you have anything else to add? I think we know what, if you did stay full-time, you said the percentage already was the 101.
Correct, without increasing the professional services
Correct.
line item. Yeah, if we worked full-time and increase that professional services line item to $100,000, we would be at about 126% of our 2025 budget.
And I believe that Gabe, was thinking, budgeting 20,000. Is that,
I think that we had discussed that.
yeah, I think, that was
Perhaps
Gabe,
better
that's
compromise.
Gabe's, thought process on that, line item.
There was one other line item that was brought up, Mark, and you were part of that conversation. Out of Stephen's budget that was gonna go into professional services in HR.
Yeah,
And I don't remember what that was. I just remember a discussion, so there might even be another number that we discussed putting into HR.
It was, other outside attorney costs that would be professional services.
Right, so I just wanna make sure we capture that number if it's needed somewhere. I just vaguely remember that one, so.
But I mean, I do think though that for this year, I think it would be wise to put something in there right there and see how at least next year matches up, right? Like if we say, well, maybe 20,000. And if we come into the end of 2026 and it was 30,000, you know, that's not enough. Right there, and at least we're starting to bring that into the conversation right there.
yeah, I would agree. You could run an average based on history to just kind of come up with something. This
Yeah.
23, but the budget was 35,000. Opening budget 24 was 10.5. We ended up spending 76. This one was 10. And we ended up spending 47. So we'll try and run an average based off of past history. And to come up with the best number you can, if you don't know what your actual expenses are gonna be, which I don't like, but sometimes you have to, that's the best you can do in some of these line items.
Trish, did you have a question?
Or just a comment.
Okay.
And maybe you guys just spoke to this, sorry, I was looking at numbers for a second. I mean, maybe she doesn't take the hit, maybe every department has to put something in there for recruitment. You know what I mean? To add up to that, because the reality is she's hiring for every department, I don't know, just random thought.
Yeah.
I think,
And
go ahead.
no, that you're just fine. So that's actually something that Chantel, we had a separate meeting
Okay.
about yesterday. We're working on coming up with an updated formula to
So I
have
can-
people help reimburse to the general fund for the HR services.
So I can speak really quickly to that.
Okay.
I am doing, a project right now where I'm taking, all, you know, non-general fund departments. And seeing what services out of administrative services that they're using, such as IT, HR, clerk, treasurer, you know, all the different, you know, whatever it may be. And I'm meeting with all of those departments to see if I can gather some percentages, hours, data, so that those departments are contributing back to the general fund. So that's just a project that I just started this week. And I'm, you know, head first into this project. And I hope to have some numbers soon that I can, you know, kind of talk about more. It may be that different departments are calculated in different ways. It could be, you know, maintenance would be totally different calculation, you know, than maybe the treasurer. So I'm working on coming up with a clear methodology to calculate those so that it's, you know, in black and white for the auditors, and so that we can maybe recoup some of those funds back into the general fund that some of these departments that are non-general fund are using.
So like sheriff's office for TRT.
The sheriff's office is on my list, and I'll be meeting with law enforcement as well. They are on the list. So there's quite a few different departments that I'm meeting with. And then we'll go from there. It's just a preliminary, I just started.
And then I know you sent the email, but you want to just go over once again, what are the changes in the policies and procedures that would need to be made?
For us to be able to reduce hours, great question. So currently what we have is, and what I'll say is in some of our, you know, special districts, for instance, cemeteries and cemetery, Moab abatement district, et cetera, they already don't have to work a full 40 hours, but currently it's required that employees have to have 40 hours on their timesheet every single week. So if they take off, they have to use vacation time, they have to use sick time, et cetera. So we would be changing that policy to indicate that we do recognize public employees who work at least, it can be 30, it can be 32, et cetera. We can set that policy ourselves. But that we can reduce that number of hours that they have to work to still be considered full-time employees. Great County employees.
I know Gina, the recorder, is making some adjustments over there, and we want to make the same to cover them.
Yeah, it just provides us, that flexibility, and again, especially particularly in my department. The way I see it really working out is, as an exempt employee, I would essentially just look at my hours over the year, so that if there is the week that I have to work 40, then maybe the week that I had vacation time scheduled, right, then I just go unpaid for more of that vacation time, so. It's an option that we've utilized at other employers that I've had, and it's worked really well.
It's a great idea. Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, so we will be moving to Steve for, the planning. Sean, sorry. I'm still learning names, I'm sorry,
That's
Sean.
okay.
I've been called Chantel Jensen, so.
I knew that's what you were talking about, I'm like, she had an S on that.
So do you want to start with the planning and zoning first?
Sure.
Sean, and then we'll, the next one.
Sounds good. Would you be willing to scroll down to the bottom line so that I can make sure I'm reading off the right one? We've had a couple different iterations. Thank you so much.
Yes.
All right, so for 2026, the first iteration, when we were just decreasing line items that could be decreased by 5%. And then the second iteration went through and looked at actual costs. I'm just going to read through the budget narrative here briefly. The total proposed budget for the planning and zoning in 2026 has decreased by 5%. Notable changes of this proposal include an increase to the annual utility costs, which were underestimated by 40% in the previous year. And then some changing based on what Stephen Valls recommended to code out on different line items. So back up there to the first line, or line number 3, salaries, we're right around 502,000. From what I understand, this is for a fully staffed
That was my question. Okay,
department.
right,
Yeah,
okay. So fully staffed, engineer, code enforcement, director, and 2 planners,
I think it's just one planner,
1 planner, okay,
just
Okay.
rough
okay, thank you.
arithmetic I went through here. I don't think it
Just one
includes
planner.
2
Okay.
planners.
Okay, okay.
And it's interesting stepping into this role and witnessing how folks have adopted or adapted to the workload. I think there's some efficiencies that can be realized, particularly as we update the land use code.
Yeah.
And then also the process that's the administrative land use code. I think there's an opportunity there to streamline it and make it better for our customers, as well as perhaps come up with some hybrid type positions where employees are not just focusing on code enforcement. For example, Brandon Black he's really good working with customers, and perhaps there's an opportunity to get involved in some of the planning and zoning activities and plan reviews. It also provides an opportunity for some career growth as well by implementing some hybrid type positions, but that's something we can talk about in the future. Whether or not we actually hire all those positions this year, I guess remains to be seen, but in the meantime, we have work to do in getting those applications through. We didn't have any overtime last year. Oh, it looks like we did, but that was probably on the building inspector. But this year we don't anticipate any overtime. Employee benefits are commensurate with the salaries there that have been plugged in by Gabe, Chantel. Subscriptions and memberships, we had a 5% decrease in annual membership dues. So we've got, we estimated $15,000 for some software for iWork. Canva, that might be a little bit high. Have a line item of 26.9.
So this says, Sean, so this says there, it's a reduction, but the 25 budget was 2,000 and now it's 26,000.
And so that's because, we did move some of Sean's, the Canva and the Adobe had been placed down in one of the lower,
Okay,
and so,
gotcha.
I believe it was in the wrong,
Okay,
line item, so we did move that up, so the 5% decrease, if you could just ignore
Okay.
that, and I'll edit that.
and
I
this
guess
is maybe just a general statement, and maybe Matt had, maybe this is already, but you do wonder, and maybe we have that price. All these different departments are using Canva, all these different departments are using Adobe. Do we have like the business price? Do we have a cheap price? I mean, you would, or are we literally?
I'm happy to, ask, Matt,
that would be
and
great.
kind of, maybe I can give an update at the next.
That'd be
um,
awesome. Do
meeting
you
on
mind doing
Friday.
that? Okay, yeah, just, cause yeah.
I'll
it
just-
just
I'm
seems
meeting
like-
with him over the other project I'm doing,
Yeah.
so I'll have time
Yeah,
to,
hopefully we
kinda
don't
just
have
get an
all these
update.
individual, like I know with the school district, I use Canva, but I use the school district's Canva, right? And I'm just
Right.
one of the users on a
Yeah.
big license, so.
I think what's happened here, Chantel, just looking at this, that the first iteration comments that I put in there just for the draft budget, carried through to the one.
to this one,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
Posted here, so.
all right, so,
I-
let me just,
No, that's okay.
yeah, I can just.
I was just like, that's not a decrease.
Yeah, the
so-
math doesn't.
I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
it's math, yeah.
We worked really hard on
I
getting
believe-
these numbers
I
to
believe you
the
did,
best
I
we
believe
could. Some of the comment on the right-hand side might be mixed in from the previous draft that we had. The next item, they have, I'll let Sean start to talk about it and then,
So public notices, we are gonna have the land use code update going on, but public notices are typically for the posting of zoning changes or PUDs development. We anticipate $7,600 for that to post the signs and post it up on the web and so forth. Next item there is travel. We anticipate some per diem, I think it's 3 days worth of per diem and lodging for a conference that occurs annually, and that conference is the APA Planning Association Conference up in Salt Lake. That's for 3 individuals, and we have also a enrollment cost on that as well.
so that's in your schooling line item will have your cost for your conference, and things like that. And then the travel line item is strictly just for travel.
Yes, that's correct. I think I have a different version here, but anyways. Supplies and expenses, this is a direct 5% increase from last year. We've spent $69 to date. Obviously, that's an area that we're not gonna spend it on. Probably then spent this year. Utilities, this was the item that went up 40%. The fuel, we're anticipating.
And can I pause for just a second? In this line item, this 4,200 that is in here, we decided that they'll be splitting the utilities between these two budgets, and that should be 3,250 in this line item, and then we would have 3,250 in the other
Inspector.
utilities, so I'm adjusting as we go. At least so that the percentage on the screen will be correct.
Is there a way I've
Do you want to come?
I've downloaded here over the last couple days incrementally these budgets. And I don't know if there's a way for me to take the most recent one that I've downloaded, put it back up on the drive, or if that's something we want to do later, but
I think we can do that later. Is there any other? The next line item would be the only one that I'm concerned about is the professional services, because they do have the land use code update this year, and some of the cost in here is at 35,000. I was told that it could be upwards of 90.
But in 2025 budget, there should have been a
There's
line
still
item.
about, believe there's, John, do you know how much is left in that? Is it 65,000?
I think it was 60,000 that we planned for a land use. code
We put
update.
85, I think it was 85,000.
85.
And
think
I do
there's
think some of it
60
got
left.
used. Okay, good. Okay.
60, and I'm not
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
sure,
Yeah,
60
yeah,
or
yeah.
65,000
Yeah, that's what I
left.
heard. Okay.
And I was told that as well as upwards of 90,000 in order to do this new section of the land use code. And
When Elisa, I don't know, I think she was pretty resolute that it was gonna be around 85,000, so I'd be shocked if it's over 100.
Okay.
But I guess we
And all
were
that.
putting out the RFP pretty soon, and I guess we'll find that out.
Well, we met with Chrissy,
Okay,
sort of in a pre-budgetary. meeting.
yeah.
Tell myself, Chrissy,
Okay,
and Gabe.
right.
And I had initially just thrown out 25 and 30,000.
Oh, yeah, no, it's higher than.
I was trying to bare bones it, and then Chrissy's, no, it's gonna be more like 90,000.
Yeah, that's, okay, that's what I would think.
That's what we put in there.
So you're saying the 60 plus this for the land use code update?
I don't have
Is
that
what
in writing because
is,
she's,
but-
but I,
Okay,
I
that
don't
sounds
know.
good. No, that makes sense.
I think that the best, I
Yeah,
think the best process is to wait till the RFP
yeah, I agree.
comes back.
Yep.
And then we can adjust this line item appropriately and more accurately, and I can update.
Yeah. But just to
board at that
reiterate,
time.
we have the 60 from 25.
It's
This
either
is
60 or
additional.
65, and I'm sorry that
Perfect.
Gabe's not here to.
No, that's okay.
But, and I can
That's what I
confirm
heard.
that next
That's what
Friday
I-
as well.
That's what I've heard is that it's 60 or
Okay.
65-ish that's still in that.
Even if it changes, we'll just amend it in the next year's budget. if we
Yeah.
need to.
Yeah, so,
Okay, that's perfect. No, that
Alright.
all aligns. That all aligns.
You
Go
guys
ahead.
Just make a formal comment in regards to this, so that way the commission can remember to review
Yes,
this number when it goes out of the budget advisory board back to you
Yeah.
guys, so that way you guys can have
Yeah.
that discussion again.
Okay.
So I would
Yeah.
just make a formal comment that this line item is discussed.
so we can keep the 35,000 for
That
now,
sounds good.
and then we'll update accordingly, in the future.
perfect.
And then the next line item is the, code enforcement for junk. And I'll let Sean talk about that. I think that's, an important line item.
Yes, so the plan is this year, I spoke with Brandon Black about this, that it's something that we planned on doing in 2025. It probably won't get done, but in 2026, we plan on having a junk cleanup activity. And I have $6,000 in here on this sheet, I think.
Yes, it's in the blue.
That's great.
Here, I'll highlight it for you.
Yeah, we're 5,700 here. I think what we ended up doing in the next iteration is we just rounded up to the 6,000.
That's great, because a couple years ago, or it was right when I first started on the commission, we took it out of discretionary, but we did a cleanup in Thompson. And I can't remember, if we maybe put 5,000 towards it, I can't remember, it's a couple days. And I think it helped, it really did, it really did. So I think it's great.
So I put 6,000,
Awesome.
that is what we discussed prior.
That's awesome.
So there's 6,000 in that, line item for the enforcement for junk.
And then planning projects. See, planning projects. Like you said, Trish, $85,000 is what was planned last year. But that was shifted on this sheet up to the other item. I think in this most recent one here is 90,000.
Right, okay.
So we're.
For basically-
we're line there.
Okay.
Zeros for the planning grants.
Which, project is that for right there?
That's for the SS4A, the joint project that we have with City of Grand Junction to basically update our transportation plan, or the Safe Streets for All component of
The
this.
city of Moab, you
Or
mean?
City of, yeah.
Dr. Sam,
City of Grand Junction.
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm-
Yeah, I'm like, why are we doing stuff with Grand Junction, huh?
It's a basic county. And by the way, too, I did pull down their land use code, and they have quite a nice flow and format.
Nice.
And I think-
For Mesa County.
Yeah, just kind
Nice.
of as an example. that we
Yeah,
have
that's
some
great.
people
Yeah.
use.
Ours is pretty cool.
And then the engineering fees, obviously, will be decreased for 2026 because we plan on being fully staffed by then.
That's correct, yeah.
Thanks, you guys, for,
And again, the cell phone allowance is in here that
Yeah.
you wanna. I don't know how many phones that's for. That for,
Yeah, planning zoning director or administrator, $60,000 or $60 a month, engineer, $60 a month, code enforcement, 40 a month, and then a Wi-Fi hotspot. That must be for code enforcement or the inspector.
Guess I've got to do it.
so,
And then, David recommended perhaps that we put $500 in there for public engagement events for the.
That's good.
Yes. Vehicle leases are at $8,000 for the pickup trucks that we have. And it's amazing to me that we're only using $500 for the whole year for gas, which speaks to how fuel efficient they are and how close inspections are.
So.
and I can't
they
go back
are
and,
Going to be $8,000, because right now.
so,
there's zero bids.
so we, I just emailed, Cody and Jason, those are there. And we just got the accurate information, via email on what the yearly cost is for both of those Nissans. And the first lease payment was more money, obviously, than the rest. So I believe the number is, $8,725. And so that'll be plugged into this as well. Then in helping Sean with this budget, it's taken a lot of different people to kind of contribute. And so it isn't as, you know, accurate as all the rest, but
No,
yes,
You're fine.
it'll
You said
be-
the budget was 8,000.
Yeah, it is,
So I just didn't know if we forgot to put the 8,000 in or something.
yeah, we just got that information. There was some question about how things had been coded, and there was actually some fleet that was coded wrong. So we decreased what we thought was going to be a higher number down, so that's good.
And then Matt's showing a replacement of a laptop out of our office for 2026, so $1,500 is on that line
On the,
inventory.
Inventory line,
because I
14.
was gonna say, because you had a comment, I don't know if this is carried over to last year, but the comment was for the laptop to come out of capital equipment. Just for future reference, if it's under $5,000, it would go in capital and go in inventory.
Inventory, yeah.
Yeah, we have 1,500 in the inventory for, and it is a laptop replacement per Matt.
That's what I'm showing.
And then the schooling line, I will let you talk about which conferences that we decided were the requirements for that.
Okay. That's the Utah Planning Association Conference in Salt Lake City for 3 staff. It's $325. Person for registration for that. And one's $825. About $635. I was thinking that out of some of those salaries, we might realize some savings. I know we talked about it.
Yeah,
We talked about that.
And I also think that maybe this is a good one that we can add to a later BAB meeting down
Yes,
the road.
I
Once
agree with
we
you.
have some of these numbers,
I agree
because
with
this is such an important budget.
Yeah.
And where we don't have a lot of the information yet for this one, I think
I
that
agree.
to move this into November, one of the
Yes.
other ones, I think would be great, and just have Sean come back and
That's perfect.
we could have a more finalized,
Yeah.
idea.
Hey, Sean, are your feet hot? Your feet have been to the fire now. You're doing great. You did great.
And so
You guys-
the-
I know you guys worked really hard on this, especially like having to get thrown into it. I appreciate it.
It does.
And actually, I wanna,
You're
can
like,
I,
"I'm
can I
there."
Can I correct something here?
Yeah.
Just a second. The amount of money for this line item for the fleet is actually in the other budget. It's in the building inspector budget, and it is correct in here. So, we have split out some of the utilities. We did, however, put the, fleet into this one, instead.
So we'll leave the other one 0.
Yeah, so the other one will remain 0. That'll also give a little more wiggle room. So the total for those two lease with that additional brand new vehicle, the first payment is a big chunk. It was 13,572. So do you want to start on the building inspector one, or do you want me to go through it? Or do you have more questions on the other one?
Well, or I have a proposal for the
Should we
building
wait?
inspector. I think we should wait.
Okay,
Are you okay with that?
I am okay with
I
that. If,
think it is
can we
in
take a
such
vote on that?
flux. Yeah.
All in
if you guys are
favor?
Okay with that?
All in favor of moving this, the, building inspector,
Yeah.
budget presentation to a later date? All in favor?
Yes.
Is there any opposed?
Thank you.
All
Yeah, I
right,
think it's just such a
Okay.
flux that,
yeah,
are you okay with that?
Of course, yeah, I came in with the traditional Friday donuts. And I noticed Lisa was the first time I hadn't seen her there in a long time.
Okay.
and if there's no more questions, then we'll end this meeting at 11:05 a.m. and we will adjourn. Thank
All right,
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great job.
I'm actually home.
Thank you.
Thanks, AJ. Thank you, Chris.
Chantel for that snafu, I hope.